Caregivers, have you ever felt like nothing is going right? Well, cheer up and welcome to Dave, the Caregiver's Caregiver radio program, where you'll learn how to avoid that dreaded thing called caregiver burnout and how to survive the grieving process. Join Dave and his guests now as they share practice tips and tools that you can start using immediately to help get you through this day. Now, here's your caregiver host, Dave Nassani.
From Los Angeles and New York City, a big LA and Big Apple, welcome to all my listeners out there in Radio Land. I am Dave, the Caregiver's Caregiver, at caregiverdave.com, along with my lovely co-host, Adrienne Gruberg, at thecaregiverspace.org. And we're coming to you live and on demand 24/7 on 20 audio and video platforms, including iHeartRadio, iTunes, YouTube, Spreaker, SoundCloud, Vimeo, Stitcher Radio, Blog Talk Radio, Mixcloud, Listen Notes, Blueberry, Player FM, Podcast.com, VIP Internet Radio, TuneIn.com, Facebook Live, HealthyLife.net, and CaregiverDave.com. And we're so proud to be voted #1 caregiver podcast of the top 50 on Player FM and one of the top 6 best podcasts on Caring.com, as well as #3 podcast out of thousands and thousands of caregiver podcasts on FeedSpot. And we have an exciting show planned for you today, don't we, Adrienne?
Yes, of course.
Yes, of course. That's the right answer. So Jill Wortman, author of If You Ever Need Anything, ... really, and Chuck Wortman, caregiver and caregiver expert and advocate. These two are married. And they're going to be on the show today, and it's going to be an exciting show. But before we get started, I just want to take this moment and thank my last week's guests, John Haggerty and Janice Butler, co-owners of Your Soul's Toolbox, where spirituality and psychology converge. And just a reminder, you can watch or listen to that interview and all our interviews on our membership website, caregiverdave.com, or any of our other 18 global networks that I had mentioned earlier, actually 20. I forgot about iHeartRadio. And all right, enough of that. Welcome to the show, Jill and Chuck. So excited to have you on.
Thank you.
It's our pleasure.
Great to be here.
Why don't you take a minute or two, one at a time, and introduce yourself? I like to ask my guests, just who is Chuck and who is Jill, and why were they put on this earth?
I'll let Jill go first.
Well, I'm Jill Wortman, and I have a deep, I just care really deeply for people who are in need of some help. And I just have thought about the fact that you can just sit here and go, wow, there must be so many people sitting in their living rooms right now that just wish someone could come help them with something in their house. You know, whether they're a widow or a caregiver that needs a break, or to, a veteran. There are just, and there may be something that they need help with fixing in their home, but especially with caregivers, maybe they need someone to give a ride or bring a meal or just, some time off. And so they can run and, go do some shopping or whatever. And so what I, am advocating really is for people to look around them and see who in their neighborhood, their church or synagogue or wherever, to just, look around and see if there's anybody that they know that right now could be really needing some help, and actually go to them.
What a caring spirit you have in a caregiver's heart.
Well,
awesome.
Anyway, I learned a lot from Chuck, who his mom was the ultimate to me.
Chuck is the caregiver, right? You're not a caregiver yet, because everyone is either going to become a caregiver or need a caregiver. There's no escape.
That's true.
That's true. So it's good that you're preparing for it before it happens. Smart girl. Chuck, what about you? Why were you put on this earth?
I guess I'm multifaceted, but the most important thing to me was when I was very young, I had my little brother enter into my life when I was 4 years of age. And he was physically challenged, mentally challenged. He has cerebral palsy. It's a very catch-all phrase. But I've had a sensitivity since I was about 4 or 5 years of age into looking at his needs, watching his development, watching my parents and all the other support groups that came to his aid to bring him to where he is right now. He's 61 years of age, and he's had a phenomenal run. We had an unfortunate circumstance about 4 or 5 years ago when my mother passed, and he was living with my mother, who was 90 upon her passing. She was taking care of my brother at that age with his special needs, which was just an incredible thing and inspirational to me. And just watching my parents grow up with my brother and seeing how they just supported not only him but other people in the community, it made me get involved with various not-for-profits. One of them had to do with affordable housing for the elderly and handicapped in the local Washington, D.C. area. And I got a lot of pleasure and knowledge out of dealing with that, and also people's needs as they give into the needs or wants of people who have to do caregiving. And I also got into the caregiving realm by being involved in insurance. And I'm a certified long-term care licensed agent where I help people make plans for the future so they can just avoid the pratfalls basically, or the mitigants that you have to have for the financial, psychological, and just the physical characteristics that change as you become a caregiver and over an extended period of time.
That is so needed. I think the statistic is, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, 5% of people over the age of 50, 55 have long-term care. Is that how disappointing the statistic is, or is it a little better than that?
It's greater than that, actually. And at the end of the day, if you are 65 years of age at this point in time in your life, there's about a 30% chance that you're going to need some type of long-term care assistance, whether it's in your home or in a nursing facility or hospice, any variety of those things, of which I've had experience in doing through various members of my family.
But the vast majority of people do not have it, do they?
No, because unfortunately they just think the husbands think they're Superman. They're not going to get they're not going to get sick, let alone need any long-term care. It's the wives that kind of generate that conversation, and that's what we do as insurance salesmen. Eventually, we always kind of go for the wife. Just as
I wish I would have met you before my wife had her stroke when she was 52, because it would have been cheap, and that would have been a lot nicer since then. But I'm 10 years younger, so I was 42, so I had plenty of time to decide I should get some. So I did. I think when I was 48, I got it. Adrienne got hers a little later in life. Hers is more expensive than mine.
63.
Yeah.
Well, you're talking to two smart people here, and I assume you both have it, right? Or you're too young?
We just got insurance insurance policies. We're going to sign the documents in the next week or two.
So we're actually talking to people who practice what they preach.
Absolutely.
So
yes.
You're an interesting pair. What brought you two together? How did you meet, and when did you meet, and why did you meet?
Well, Jill and I both had 20-year marriages. And I think basically in 2009, we just celebrated our 10th year of being dating, being together. We've been married for 3 years now. We had a long courtship because we both had grown children at home. And particularly me, I had a couple of boomerang children that needed attention. Again, the caregiver thing here. I had one that had POTS and another one that had psychological needs. Wow. In addition to my brother and my mother, so it's been quite an interesting last 4 years on that regard. But Jill and I
I'm so glad you found yourself and you were able to find love. You know, it's so hard for.
It was a godsend. Basically, we met on ChristianMingle.com.
Oh.
Because we are faith-based, and we both swore after we found out about all this, we both swore we would never go online dating. And but we did, and the rest is history. But I think we both have a a common goal, and to try to, not to sound too corny or sappy, but I think we really do have an interest in seeing the betterment of mankind.
Yeah, sounds that way.
Well, you look good together. That's important.
Yeah,
Thank
that's very
Thank
true.
you.
And you
Thank
get along, family and kids,
you.
everyone's getting along. It's
How
so
many
hard
children
when
are there all
kids,
together?
yeah, when kids' parents start dating again, sometimes you get more grief from the kids.
I know. Well,
Right.
mine were away in college. They were pretty receptive to it. They loved to
Good.
talk right away, and he could tell he's an all around really sweet guy. And
Yeah, he's like everybody loves Raymond. Everybody loves Chuck.
well, it's funny. I mean, we'll be out, and strangers will come up and ask if they can hug him.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's
I know what
funny.
that feeling is like, believe it or not. I have strangers
Yeah.
just telling me their deep, dark secrets and crying, and I don't even know them. And
Yes.
You're
we don't know why this
receptive.
happens, but it's a gift, I
That's,
guess.
that's right. It is.
I
It
think it's
is.
a father figure thing. Or I'm 6'9", and
Wow.
I think people just kind of, I don't know. I just have different purposes for different people, I guess.
They're
I
like,
don't
you
know.
remind me of.
Either Jill is as tall as you, or it's just her torso upper.
No.
I have long legs.
Yeah.
So, Jill, why did you write this book, and what went on in your life that made you feel like you needed to write this book?
Well, it was actually becoming single after 20-year marriage, and
Was it a divorce or death or what?
it was a divorce. But so my first Valentine's Day, I was like, I'm not sitting here by myself. Forget about it. But I wasn't the type. I wasn't going to go belly up to a bar somewhere or anything like that. So I thought, you know what? I'm not the only one. And I just thought about every single friend. I knew friends that were going through divorces, people who were recently widowed, and I just called up everybody I knew, or I'd run into somebody and invited them over for a Valentine's evening dinner. And we
Cool.
just had a great time, and
Yeah.
we met every week after that, or even in between, and we just became the best of friends. We just laugh our heads off and cry and just be supportive of each other. And
You started a support
one thing
group.
I learned was that, we had a lot of things in common, widowed or divorced. We all of a sudden had to take care of all these things around the house that maybe we weren't used to doing. And it's frustrating, and it's like, oh, who's going to, I remember buying a drill to hang some drapes, and, my former husband was, pretty handy, and I never had to practically change a light bulb. So here I am,
Missed
go to
that.
Home Depot, got a drill, and it wasn't going in. Just frustrating. So, and you don't want to ask anybody for help. And I found that with my widowed friends as well. So anyway, I just kind of and what did happen is a friend of mine lost her husband. And I've also always kind of been a little awkward when someone loses a spouse or something dramatic happens. I think, oh, I don't want to bother them. I don't want to, intrude. But I decided I wasn't going to do that anymore. And a friend lost her husband, and right away I went over there, and I had a small landscaping business. And, I just thought, well, maybe, I know she's going to have a lot of people coming to the house. And so maybe I'll see if I can do a little spruce up, put some flowers, or do something. So anyway, did that. And just as the guys and I were finished, we're cleaning up, she came walking up the street, just tears, so happy that we were there doing that. And she just said that every time she pulled in, she was just so happy to see, everything looking so nice. And that was just one thing off her plate that brought her some joy. And the whole time I was going, why am I doing this, really? I mean, it got to be a little expensive. I bought a pot and, a big one, and put a lot of a lot of things out there. And I had to keep checking myself, like, okay, what are my motives here? Because I'm really, really into doing this. And if she had said no, I would have been disappointed. And
So are you good at
really,
it now? Are you good at drilling holes and hanging pictures and all that stuff?
well, not really. But my point with this story is, and I know it's getting a little long, but I realized that it was really, I felt like God wanted her to have it. He wanted to bless her, and at the same time, he was blessing me using so my book puts people using their gifts to help people who need the help, which to me is God's hands.
Yeah.
God's hands.
Explain that, because the title is "If You Ever Need Anything."
Yes.
You ever need anything, really? And there's like 4 of them.
Yes.
So what are they all about? I mean,
it's not a book.
Are they helping people to network with other people, or tell me what it's all about?
One. Okay. Well, there's one for everybody, which would include caregivers, and say if it was used at a funeral, it's a book where it would be laid out, and rather than just say if you ever need anything, people will go over there, put their contact information and a brief message, and then there's a list of different things that you may offer to do. Like some people are good at helping with technology or handyman type services. Other people would love to, give you a ride somewhere or be an advocate for you at a doctor's office or with attorneys, or, we all have our specialties, and that is what we prefer to share. Don't ask me to, I'd bring a meal. I'd rather not bring a meal. I'd rather do something else.
So is the reader of this book getting information, and you're telling them how to ask for help? Is that how it works?
So this could be by a bedside of someone who's ill in a hospital, or as far as caregivers go, they could use it, it could be at their home or wherever, and people could, register. It's actually a registration book.
And how does it work?
The people are registering to help. And
they do it online?
Well, we're going to have that as well, a website where you do that. But the book it's something that they get to hold afterwards. And, they have all these offers of help that people have not only said, if you ever need anything, which has just become a throwaway term,
Right.
People just never follow through. So they'll have this wonderful book where they can, if they need something, that they can, it says really at the end, because it's encouraging them to actually ask for help, because most people won't even ask for help. They are sitting home, needing things done, needing some help, and they won't call anybody. And I'm particularly, have a heart for veterans, people who, are maybe even too proud to ask. And with the suicide rate, twice the national average for military, service members, first responders. That one of the books is dedicated to them, and we'll have a patriotic theme. And
are these out yet? Have they come out yet?
No, they'll be coming out though. And
you're going to do all 4 at one time, or one at a time, or what's your plan?
We're debating about that. I'd like to do them all at the same time, but and proceeds from each book will go to groups supporting service members, and there's a whole.
Now that you just told the world that it's coming out, now you got to bring it out. So
It's coming.
it becomes a
Yes.
self-motivating, self-fulfilling prophecy. That's
Now,
another
is
reason
there
I had you on the show, because she didn't want to come on because she says, oh, well, you know, we don't have the website up yet and we don't have the book out yet. I says, you know what? Come on the show, tell them it's coming out, and now you're forced to actually
there?
make it happen. Because without
Well, we
goals,
do.
without deadlines, it just doesn't happen. And I'm
I
just speaking
know,
from
and we
experience.
appreciate you having us on, and you know, we're really excited. You
Sounds like a
know,
great book.
they're yeah.
Is
Thank you.
is there a place in these books for the person who's widowed or a vet or the person who's in
Yes.
need of help to actually like list the things that they might need, and then the other people would volunteer
Well,
to do this,
there,
that, or the other thing?
there will be that on the website, but for the book, it's more they'll see what they need and look through the book and see whose skills and who they think might match
Do you
up.
have the
And
titles
then,
for each 4 books yet?
well, they're all if you ever need anything.
But the subtitles are different, right?
The subtitles are different.
Do you
There's
have those yet?
the caregivers. Excuse me.
Do you have the subtitles for the 4 books yet? What they're
Yeah,
called?
I do. There's the military and first responders edition.
Okay.
The first one is if you ever need anything, ... really, offers of help, words of encouragement, because there will be encouraging quotes and verses and things. And in the back, there'll be a lot of, resources and things for people. And I think it'll be very helpful.
So it says here in your
Sounds
bio that you have served
Thank you.
10 years in a women's jail ministry. Tell us about that.
Yes, I did.
That's interesting.
Yes, and it was interesting. One of the pastors at church asked me if I would want to do that because they were looking for people, and I said sure. And actually, I started going in with a friend, and she would lead it, and I would just be a co-leader. And it was kind of interesting going in and having the doors locked behind you, and all of a sudden I was like, uh-oh, I think I'm thirsty. I need some water. But anyway, it was so great. We would go in there, and I felt like, I'm not the greatest teacher in the world, but I'm more of an encourager. So I just felt like, we would go in and we'd do a little Bible study, but mostly we would really chat with them and let them talk.
Mm-hmm.
And they were going through some really hard times. So it's really women in
That'll
transition.
give you a lot of perspective, yeah.
Oh,
Listening is a very, very important part of all of this.
Yes.
Being able to listen. When somebody knows that you're listening to them, it makes the world of difference.
Yes.
And then you also used to visit homeless shelters. So tell us about that.
Well, also the church asked me, this is years later, but I was doing them like overlapping, doing both. But that was really great too, going to the homeless shelter, and the ladies, they come in after dinner and we just sit around the dining table. People could come if they want, or they didn't have to, and they'd be there, and their children would join in sometimes.
Right.
And it was great. Sometimes I wouldn't even feel like going because I'd had a long day. It's so late and it's dark, but every time I went there, it was such a blessing to me. It was so great.
And to them, no doubt. Tell me what a woman, are most people in homeless shelters women or not necessarily?
This was a women's shelter.
Yeah. So what does a woman have to go through to where she decides, I better go to a homeless shelter? Are these people actually, are they actually homeless first, or do they get kicked out of their house for, not having the money for rent, and then they go right into it? How long, if they are actually homeless, how long do they actually stay on the streets before they realize, maybe I should go to a homeless shelter?
Right. Well,
I'm sure you've heard some stories.
No, I have, but I would also be careful not to ask. I just, what if they offered information, but I never wanted to really ask them. But a lot of times it was domestic violence issues, and they had nowhere to go, and like some of the women weren't even from the United States, and so they were, they didn't have family, or and then there was one with a family that was just not approving of them, and it's just all kinds of different reasons,
Yeah.
and so, but
Well,
it
listen,
was.
we're going to take a quick break before. Hold that thought,
Okay.
Adrienne. And then we'll come back and we'll answer Adrienne's question, and then we'll talk to Chuck. We'll give him a turn here. So don't go
All
away. We'll be right back.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
We are a community of caregivers that understands and supports you wherever you are in your journey. We are a place to connect with other caregivers, but more importantly, a place to get practical, actionable help. There are lots of ways for you to get support. First of all, you can download our welcome pack. This will get you started on your Thrive journey. Next, you can ask and get answers to your questions by posting them here in our private Facebook groups. You can also get live online support by attending one of our live weekly Connect webinars. You can get practical, actionable advice by listening to our weekly podcast. You can hear and read other stories about other caregivers' experiences. Plus, add your own in our weekly Share Your Story forum, posted every Tuesday in the Facebook group. You can access essential resources and download practical Thrive Solutions packs, all of which are geared to help you thrive as a caregiver. You get lifetime access to all of our resources. Again, we're here to support you and help you thrive and to enjoy your life as a caregiver. And remember, this is a place to get hope, not just cope.
And we're back on the Caregiver Dave Show with Jill and Chuck Wortman and our wonderful host, Adrienne Gruberg from the Caregiver Space. So what question were you going to ask, Adrienne?
I just wanted to know if any of these shelters were training and giving guidance to the women that were there to help get them back in the workforce. Because I know in New York, that's a very big part of certain shelters, especially for the women with children. And I happen to work with those people. There are so many different things that they need to help them that they might not just get from being in this one facility.
Well, they would take them to there was a center where there was, a job center. And quite frankly, I didn't really ask a lot about that because, I don't know, they would tell us things while we were sitting there. But this place also had stores, like almost like Salvation Army. It wasn't Salvation Army, but so they could work there. But they had, it was close to this training center where, they could go and learn computer skills. And different things. But, so and I'm not really sure. They were assigned a social worker, so the social worker would deal with them and help them. And, the goal was, I think they had a certain time limit and to get things together and get a job and everything. So, and then if they didn't, they would actually move to another place. They kind of moved them to different places. They didn't pick them out or anything like that, but they, they tried to guide them and, do the best they could with
It's a long recovery.
It is. So, but yeah, they're great seeing them out in the community, and even the ladies from the jail. I'd, be in the grocery store, and I'd go, "Hey,
hey, how are
they're
you?"
They're working and doing great. So,
That's awesome. That's very rewarding. Nice. Very rewarding.
Yeah.
For both of you.
Yes.
So, Chuck, tell us about your caregiving experience. You said that as a young child, you felt the the caregiver's heart for your brother?
Well, if I can, just give one example that kind of set the tone for the whole thing. I just noticed that my brother, being physically challenged and mentally challenged, with children in the neighborhood or anywhere that we would go, people would look at him differently, maybe not giving him opportunities like everyone else. And it hit me so hard one day when my relatives were around. We were playing croquet in our side yard. And everybody picked up their mallet and ball, except for my brother, of course. And then he said, "What about me?" And that just broke my heart. And obviously, to this day, it just rings true with me. And I think it just set the tone for my willingness and the way that I want to help people in the future. And I did that in various different ways. But I think it just goes hand in hand with what Jill's purporting to do here and wanting to facilitate the processing of these books and getting them out into the community, because I think it just bridges the gap between a need between an individual that has certain wants and things that they're just trying to do to get their life whole again, and to bridge that gap to other people that can be of help. Because the more I get involved with all these faith-based organizations and just talking with people, it's amazing when I'm talking long-term care with some clients that everyone's got a story. If it's not about their direct family, it's their friend, or I know somebody that they're doing some caregiving, and it's just phenomenal, the stories I hear, and again, the hardships that they have to endure because they weren't prepared for it, they don't know how to do it, they're maybe afraid to ask, and it's just something that we feel we can just provide based on our mutual backgrounds, that we can provide a service, and it's just something that I think we're both called upon to do.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And my mother is currently a caregiver for my father has had cancer like 5 different times, and
wow.
I mean, and he's had his 3rd bout right now of lung cancer. So
how old are they?
Well, he is now 88, and she's 70. She's 76, and 30 years ago we thought he was, going to be leaving us, and
wow.
But she's just really nursed him back to health each and every time.
That's the problem with a good caregiver; they just keep them alive.
I know. But she just sometimes, it gets a little dicey sometimes between the two of them, because she's not strong herself. So
How's her health?
It's not that great, really. And I don't know.
Has she learned to ask for help?
I don't think she really does ask for help, and she doesn't live nearby, which makes me feel bad. No, she doesn't ask for help. And
she can be your guinea pig with the book.
Yeah, she can.
I know. Well,
yeah.
Because if you can change her, you can change the world.
And it's so typical that as aging comes and there's this need to keep yourself independent, you don't want to ask for help. You want to do everything yourself.
Exactly, but she's just getting really worn out.
Yeah.
And he just had, a C. diff, which...
Right.
Chuck, were you always selling insurance, or is this something new?
It was something new. It happened when I was home alone. I had to take care of my brother after my mother passed away. And she was in the hospital, and in hospice, he was living with me. And unfortunately, my parents never set up any type of long-term care or insurance, that type of thing. And they always felt that I would take care of my brother. Well, I had 4 children, and it was just something that was always a bone of contention. It was just one of those things. And at the end of the day, when the time came where my mother had passed, I had to quit my job. I had 35 years in banking. And to answer your question, it was during the time when I was taking care of my brother, sitting at home, waiting to go pick him up from his daycare provider, that somebody called me up and they said, "Hey, I heard that you retired from banking." And I said, "Well, no, I had to quit my job, basically." And it was the owner of an insurance company, and we had played golf together a few times, and I'd given him a few referrals. He says, "Well, why don't you try insurance?" And I was like, I don't know, and all this. But eventually I thought, well, maybe this is a challenge for me. And so I did it 3 years ago. And I've been doing it ever since, and also still continuing my banking career on a part-time basis as well. So, but I'm still involved, obviously, with all the 501c3 organizations that I've been dealing with. And, through that experience with my brother, sitting at home, fortunately, I had the resources to be able to do that for some time. But I just remember sitting at home wondering, when is this going to end? There was no plan for my brother. Fortunately, I had enough knowledge from my involvement in the community with different groups that I got him an intellectual disability waiver. And that was something that was an incredible thing. It was what I was at before this webinar here. I was at an annual meeting for my brother in his support services. There was like 5 or 6 other people around the table. Once a year we get together and make sure what he's done over the past year, what he's planning to do in the next year, and that type of thing. So just getting him that waiver was a tremendous thing for him.
Is that a Medicaid program?
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
So.
And there's people I know there's other people that need that, and that's part of the things that I do when I talk with people about, people just don't know. And you have to inform them, even though the resources are there, you can Google things and whatever. Yeah. But at the end of the day, people are just either intimidated, overwhelmed, or whatever like that to deal with. I had to deal with Medicare, Medicaid, community service groups. It was unbelievable. And thank God it only took about 1.5 years, which sounds like a long time, but there are years of waiting lists on this. And it was an education, to be sure.
They also have assisted living waivers as well that they would pay for assisted living. That's a pilot program, but it's going well. That's how we got my mother in a nursing home that basically was $3,500 a month, and they paid it all.
Wow.
I'm very grateful for that.
Great. Yes, that's very good.
Where is your brother living now?
He's living in a nice group home in Falls Church, Virginia. And it's very nice. Jill and I go. We visit him every weekend.
Does he like it?
That's great.
Chuck brings him places and to concerts and games and movies.
Was it hard to convince him to go in there at first?
He was very. If he had any hesitation, he really didn't express it. He's kind of stoic. But he went with it, and like today when we were talking with his group, everyone was there. They could tell that from his disposition over the last year, just how he continues to thrive, and that's a key word, thriving.
Good, yeah.
Yes. Because when he was at Chuck's, he would just sit there all day long, right? And
while I'm at work, he's sitting on the sofa for like 16 hours a day.
Well, how about the time when he came home, left him, tell the story.
I left my brother one morning. I had to go to a chamber event. I was in banking. And he was at the breakfast table. He hadn't finished yet. And I left him at about 7:30 in the morning because I didn't have time to do what I normally do with him, but I had to be out. And I came back home at...
he had his walker there.
He had his walker there, okay, and he's sitting at a table. And I came home at like 6 o'clock that night. And when I got home, he was still sitting at the table. He was afraid to try to get up and to get onto his walker, or he wouldn't go down on the floor. And he was sitting there for, 8, 9, 10 hours.
That long? I didn't realize it was that long.
A lot of people think that they can take care of their loved one, and maybe they made promises, I'll never put you in a nursing home, and that's a bad promise to make. Because they are so much better in a facility, and not all of them are bad. Yeah, you have to, maybe 9 out of 10 of them are bad, but, if you do your homework, you do your research, you can find a good one.
Well, as I mentioned before, my mother had other plans for my brother, me taking care of him, but it just couldn't be. I don't see how it could have happened. And I know people do that, but at the end of the day, I'm thinking, what's best for my brother?
Yeah, many people are motivated by guilt, and they make the wrong decisions when guilt is motivating you.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, at first we had a friend of mine who was going through a divorce. We had her move in with Bobby because he had he and his mother was 90 years old. He was 55, and he'd never been away from his mom. It was just devastating for him. And a friend of mine, we thought, oh, this will be great because she needs a place, and he has a nice little house, and he needs somebody.
And there we go into the financial end of things, where not only do I have my household, but I have another household to pay for the caregiver, the mortgage, cable, bills, all that. I mean, it just got crazy.
But yeah, that didn't quite work out because she would, anyway.
No, that's hard.
But it's all great now. Yeah,
But
we're
the
very
thing is,
thankful.
I've been there. I've actually been there, for better or for worse. And I can relate to people, not just from the very beginning with my brother when he was handicapped, but essentially going through all that and just knowing how people, I don't know if I was depressed or not. I'm just kind of sitting there with my brother,
Well, you had teenagers at home too.
Yeah, so I had.
Yeah, it was a little bit of.
Were they supportive or not really?
They were supportive. It was, I would say maybe they looked at it as an intrusion, maybe on their daily lives, perhaps, because he did have special needs. I'll be honest about that. But at the end of the day, they were pretty good. But it was just such he's my brother, so how can it be a disruption, or how can it be an inconvenience? Right. Okay, at the end of the day, but as you know, it is a life changer.
Yeah, is he your older brother or younger brother?
He's 5 years younger than me. Yeah.
Wow.
So, but he's doing well. Bottom line, I hope my mother and father aren't. They're both in heaven now. I hope they're not too upset at me.
No,
I think they'll be okay.
You've been a wonderful brother.
So now that you have this new partnership, this marriage, what are your plans for the future together on helping caregivers? Because I assume that's what you do. You both come to the table with different gifts, and I think it's a good marriage of your gifts. So what are your plans? What's your plan A and plan B?
Well, we are getting these books out, and we are really going to advocate for caregivers. And one of the key groups I'd like to reach really are parents with children, for them to start looking around the neighborhood, looking, and just pointing out, let's bring back the golden rule and the, do unto others.
Oh, yeah.
Love your neighbor as yourself, and like say, hey, to the kids, what do like I brought my kids, there was a lady down the street, and I would sometimes, interrupt their day, but make them, let's go, we're going to go to Arlene's, and we're going to, weed for her and, help her in her yard. And, do we have to? But it was good for them, and they felt better about it afterwards. But I think we need to encourage people, some empathy, really, of people who may need some help, and for parents to start bringing their kids, and just being aware of people in their circle that they can just help, and just, especially when what I've learned is when something happens tragically. I've had a couple friends whose husbands have committed suicide, which is horrible, but they need somebody to just come over and do something. And I think it's the way with caregivers. Like, I think people need to just go over there and say, hey, how about if I do this? Or can I, I'm going to mow for you today, or something like that.
I can see you setting up a network of helpers, online through your books. I don't know if
Yeah.
that has occurred to you, but there are a lot of people who, their spouses have died or whatever, or their loved one, they don't need their time anymore, and so they want to continue being a caregiver, but they don't have anyone to caregiver. So it'd be a great volunteer
You
thing.
want to be useful.
Setting up in different cities. I mean, just your imagination is the only thing that would limit it of how big and how far.
Yes, and actually in the county we live in, this is Loudoun County, Virginia, and they have a group called Loudoun Caregivers, I believe, and they do that. It's a volunteer group, and they go in and help with things, when called.
God will lead you. He knows what you're supposed to do. You just got to catch up with him.
Absolutely.
I mean, I live in Manhattan, and at this point, there's really no such thing other than an architectural neighborhood. There are landmarks that distinguish one neighborhood from another, and that's about it. There's a new program online called Neighborhood.
Oh, yes.
And people will get on and they'll ask, do you know anyone who can do this? Do you know anyone who could do that? I mean, I had somebody who very simply, was asking for help with their dog. Now, they were getting a puppy. My dog was grown. I could help out. I could do something.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
But there are all sorts of cases, and people will ask, I need a good doc. I'm new to the neighborhood. I need a good doctor.
Right.
I mean, it's simple, but if it was formulated in a way where you could really ask for the kind of help that you need, rather than asking other people for references,
Exactly.
it's a great idea.
Yes.
Listen, let's take a break, and we'll talk more about this when we get back. So we'll be right back. Don't go away.
Okay. Thank you.
Dave Nasani, the Caregiver's Caregiver, has just released his 6th book entitled It's My Life Too. Reclaim your caregiver sanity by learning when to say yes and when to say no. It was specifically written for caregivers who know they should be putting their needs first, but just don't know how. Dave is the sole caregiver to his wife, Charlene, since 1996. He knows firsthand what caregivers are going through, because he is one. And he now speaks all across the country, offering caregivers his incredible caregiver support package. Even the airlines tell us that in the event of an emergency, to put your oxygen mask on first, before you help your child with their mask. They know that those who don't heed their advice often black out, thus becoming unable to help either themselves or their child. And caregivers are exactly the same way. It's My Life Too. Reclaim your caregiver sanity by learning when to say yes and when to say no. Will help caregivers who are neglecting their sleep, diet, and social life, and learn to put their needs first. Pick up your copy today, or buy one for your special caregiver. On sale everywhere, and at caregiverscaregiver.com.
And we're back on the Caregiver Dave Show with Jill and Chuck Wortman and Adrienne Gruberg from the Caregiver Space. So, guys, I am excited for what's going on and how you two are partnering together to help caregivers. And hopefully we gave you some ideas if you didn't already have some. But I'm sure you see the vision of how big this can get, no?
It can get very big.
Yes. Yes, we do, and so yes, we're trying to put the foundation together. Really,
well, Chuck seems like a very organized guy, so I think what he's accomplished so far, I think he sees it all and how it's going to be done. So you're in good hands together.
Right, that's right. So yes, we can make a good team. So anyway.
Yeah. So,
yeah.
I read here that your ex-husband, was a veteran, and that's partly why you have a heart for the veterans. So, one of your books is going to be geared toward that, I guess. It says here on your rap sheet
Yeah.
where you're talking about, I'm assuming these are the different topics of your books, like deaths of despair, combating suicide in our service members, creating teams of support, and then there's adjusting to alone, empowering newly divorced and widowed women, advice on easing the transition and having fun, and then there's what to do when tragedy strikes someone you know, how not wanting to be asked is the new giving. And how using my small business to help widows and single moms inspired a book. So it sounds like you're on the right track.
Yes, thank you. Yes, I would. The what I would do with my business is I called it random acts of landscaping. I would go to homes of.
That's right. You're a gardener, aren't you?
Yes. Well, when I'd have some downtime and the guys needed something to do, I would say, "Hey, let's go over to, so and so's house," and we just do a spruce up and help single, mostly widows, newly divorced ladies.
You have a
with,
green thumb.
Yeah, or
you
we
can't
just
drill a hole in a wall, but you can certainly plant some.
Well, I went and got a bigger
Plant a
drill.
tree.
I went and got a bigger drill. Let's about the drill.
I have to tell you from personal experience about, 10 years ago when we first met, and I was fairly recently divorced and had the house and the kids and all that. And of course, I wasn't doing any more on the exterior except for maybe mowing the yard. So there was a lot of things, deferred maintenance, should I say, that needed to be done as far as plants and what have you. And
It was scary. Let's just say that.
okay, so I told Jill, I said, I'm putting my total faith in you. I don't know anything about plants. Just do what you do, and I'm sure it'll be fine. And she ended up taking the home that I loved. I loved the actual structure that I always wanted, but she made that house with the uplighting and everything. It looked like the White House when it was done. It was unbelievable.
Wow,
So,
it was fun. He gave me free reign. So.
Is that your
but
business?
that's what she does.
But now we're gonna move. I'm kind of moving away from that. Getting divorced. I mean, like I was joking. I was like the garden club lady, a member. I went from garden club member to being the gardener.
Yeah. It's a good move.
Yeah, well, it brings me a lot of joy, and it brings other people joy. So it's been fun. It's been really fun. So it's a nice thing to share because not everybody likes to be out there doing it. So
Doing it.
but I
enjoy
the design. I enjoy the landscape design. That's the fun part.
So, where are you struggling with your website? Do you have a guy who knows how to do it? Do you have a concept of what you want? Because my nephew's in the process of rebuilding my website, and
Good.
it had grown and grown and grown, and then it was top heavy and it was unorganized. It was like a maze, and he says, we just got to tear this thing down and start over again. So the good news is that you're starting from scratch. I assume you are, right?
Yes.
So do you have somebody that you're talking to, or you're still
someone in particular? There are a few ways to go with that, and but I'd love a name.
Well, I'll give you the phone number of my nephew because he's a good visionary. At least, at the very least, he can share with you after he hears your story what he could envision for you.
Yes, thank you. I do have different layers of vision for it.
Yeah, well, believe me, he's very good, and he's got a team in India that helps him. Because they're very smart over there. And I'll hook you up because I know websites can be very frustrating, and and you don't want to just trust somebody to do it, and now your hands are tied. You got to call them every time you need something. You want to know how to basically make minor changes so that you're not calling them every time. You want to make a small change a picture, change a comment, change a post. You can do it yourself, and it's pretty easy.
Put your own posts up.
That's
a
what I
WordPress
was.
site, is pretty easy.
Well, that's what I wondered. First, I had gotten a Wix site, and then I'm hearing
No, you don't want to do that.
WordPress, and so I just,
WordPress is good, but you need a combination where somebody smart is doing the complicated stuff with coding and the simple stuff with, the stuff that WordPress is famous for, making it easy.
Right.
So hopefully that'll work out for you.
When you said that I was organized and that type of thing, yes, from my background in banking and accounting, what have you, like that, I am like that. Jill, on the other hand, is more of a creative sort, that type of thing. And I think we complement each other very, very well. And, I just remembered the other day when we were thinking about things, and she was talking about all the things that needed to be done and maybe getting a bit overwhelmed and all that.
Yeah.
It's like the more that you know, the more you don't know, in a way.
Yeah.
And so I said, no, let's just break this down. I said, what's the most important thing we need to do?
Bite-sized pieces.
Let's let's just separate things and just knock it out like incrementally like that.
It's perfectionism is the killer.
Yeah, get rid of that. You can't have it. Because I met you in, was it May or June?
Never get it out.
When did we meet? April.
April.
May, June, July, August, September, October.
I know.
I'm not even going to ask you what you've done in the last 6 months. Just the past is the past. We're looking
rewritten, and learning everything, but no, it has to happen.
Well, just let me tell you, it will never be perfect. I mean, there has to be. It's like birthing a baby. After a while, you say, what? It's perfect enough. It's not perfect.
You can always write another book.
Yeah.
Yes, and it's true. I actually have like 10 in this series.
I'm sure you
do. But I mean, and I have to I'm like the idea. I mean, I have to shut off my ideas because I have to shut them off and start doing them.
I say analysis to paralysis.
Yeah,
yes.
Yeah. The first one has to come out, and I guarantee you it won't be perfect. But once the first one comes out, you'll see the mistakes. You say, okay, we'll fix that in the second one, and so on and so on.
Yes.
Your first anything is not perfect. My first TV show sucked, and everybody thought it was great, but only I thought it sucked,
Right.
But by the 25th, it was much better. So the more you do, the better it will get, but you have got to get rid of that perfectionistic streak, which
I know, it's terrible. I just don't want to do it wrong. I want to, so.
It's okay to do it wrong. Because you can always fix it. And you know what? Someone said, you know what? My crappy little book is better than the book you haven't written yet. You know what I mean?
That's right. And actually the basis, the whole, everything down there is basically what I've written to begin with. I've just rewritten it. But it was an idea that I got up one morning, and that's when I start thinking. And I started writing it all down.
Just give it to a retired school teacher who is anal about finding typos and grammatical errors and tense issues and so on.
Right.
Take it out of your plate now because your eyes are blinded.
Well, that's what I
can't see the forest from the trees.
Yeah, you
Take it out and put it in somebody else's hands.
That's exactly it.
You agree, Chuck?
Amen.
Yeah, I'm saying all the things that you want to say, but you can't because you're too close.
I know. He says it once in a while, and I know it's...
Just say thank you.
Yeah. No, it's happening, and thank you very much for the encouragement and everything.
I don't want to have this conversation again by the end of the year, so,
Well, all right.
Call me. If you ever need anything, call me. I've got resources that I can share
Really?
with you. Yes, really. And how can someone get a hold of you if they want to get some help, or maybe they want to ask you some questions or whatever?
Well, Jill at everneed.org.
Everneed, EVERNEED.
.org, yes, and I'd love to hear from anybody. And
great.
Right. Well, that's it. Adrienne, how do we get a hold of you?
Oh, you know that.
Adrienne at thecaregiverspace.org.
That's
also
right.
A nonprofit. That's right. And I am caregiverdave.com.
hey.
So I thank you for everybody showing up and all you people who faithfully come every week to watch us or hear us, whether it's on an audio or a visual platform. And with that, I say goodbye. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Caregiver's Caregiver radio program with Dave Nassani.